Okay, well, let's begin. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being present. My name is Noeli Reyes. I'm part of the team of the Caribbean Climate Hub. I give you your welcome today to this Tech Talk, where we will be talking about the interpretations or the indexes within the USDA NRCS, the web survey that we will be looking at. Before we begin, it's important that you know that we have the services, the interpretation services. We also have the services of ASL interpretation, sign language interpretation. The interpreters are spotlighted pinned at the webinar, so they will always be the first two images in your screen. If you want the speaker's picture to be bigger, you can change to speaker view and the upper part of your screen. If you want to see all of the speakers in the same size, you can leave it in gallery view. We also have opened the Q&A section. We appreciate you posting your questions there so we can clarify them at the end of the tech talk. Today, we are in the Caribbean Climate Hub. We have Guillermo Fibur and Laura Marin. They will be giving me some technical assistance. We also have the director of the center, Dr. William Gould, and our resources for the talk are the scientists Manuel Matos and Jackie Beca, whom you will meet further on. Briefly, we will have an introduction from the Climate Hub, and then we will enter fully into the presentation and the tool by Manuel and Jackie, and we will have an opportunity for questions and answers, and we'll have a short summary at the end. The Caribbean Climate Hub, we're one of 11 centers. We support the USDA, collaborating with organizations and agencies in order to promote the work of educators, agricultural workers, and other audiences. We talk about forest and agricultural practices that are sustainable. We focus on research and scientific tools that can be practical and to spread scientific information to our target audiences. We develop a number of tools, some of them focused on helping people in their process of decision making, like the climate adaptation guides, planification in agriculture, and agricultural statistics. These resources and tools, you can find them for free in our webpage, CaribbeanClimateHub.org, which you will see in the hub, or scan the QR code on your screen. Without further ado, I cede the floor to Dr. William Good so that he can introduce our speakers for today. Thank you, Noeli. And we thank Manuel Matos and Jacqueline Vega for sharing their knowledge with us and their time. We are very happy to have you here in the Tech Talk, today's Tech Talk. Manuel is a graduate from the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez, and he started working with NRCS in 2004. And he's worked in various states and other countries as well. So he brings a lot of experience to Puerto Rico. He is the state soil scientist, the leader in that field in Puerto Rico, and he is always available to share his wealth of knowledge with farmers and colleagues like I am and people from other agencies. And it's a privilege having him here and participating with us. Jacqueline also graduated from the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. She started with NRCS in 2011, And she has also worked in various states in the United States and now is bringing that knowledge to Puerto Rico to share it with us today. And without any more introduction, let me introduce you to Manuel so that he can start today's Tech Talk. Thank you, Dr. Gu, for your words. We're very thankful that for your invitation in order to share some of the services that the agency gives and the products that we've developed. I will share the presentation. Let me see, share here. Okay, if you can confirm that you're seeing the presentation, we see it, Manuel. Okay, without further ado, this afternoon, we're going to be talking about what the different layers in the soil are and the different models or interpretations that we develop in order to help understand how the soil will behave depending on how they're handled. Okay. In the first Tech Talk that we provided a few weeks ago, we discussed what the different soils are in a specific place so that we can see what the features of those areas are. And we were able to also demonstrate how they worked. So we also looked at how the land registry of the soil is done. So we began with a partner in the development of the registry. We defined the area of study. We collected initial data. We did some field studies. We collected samples, described the profiles. We identified representative areas from which we then do a lab analysis that's detailed to then classify them formally into the different types of soils that we find. We separate the different areas in the map, be it with topographical aerial photographs and so on, and we develop a series of models and maps so that we can help to summarize and understand the different types of soils in different types of handlings. No? And then we move to the part of the land registry of the soil. A little bit to be more specific, what are these interpretations? As I said before, they are models that we use where we use the properties, be them physical or chemical, of the soils and the features of the area to predict how the soil will react to a specific handling. The term of use and handling can be used, or it can apply to different activities. Like, for example, it can be used for agricultural practices, and we can implement some practices, be them agricultural or conservation practices, for specific crops. But they can also be used for engineering uses or environmental uses. Examples of these would be the the humid areas of carbon dioxide and the habitat of pathogens that are transmitted through the soil. And these are things that we're specifically working on, meaning in the way that we speak about them. Okay, but how do we arrive at these interpretations? So I'm going to try to summarize them as simply as possible. We identify the properties or the features, how the depth, texture, drainage, and inclination, chemical and physical properties, and then those go into tables and data spaces, which is the national system, and they get then combined with spatial data. Here, depending on the model that we're going to create, we identify what those properties, the specific properties, are that will bring a change within the model or its use, be them physical, chemical, or qualities of the landscape. So we identify the properties, we create some rules or parameters where we're going to identify up to where that range, where I want my model to work one way or another. And then I enter into a phase of evaluation, and I use some techniques that are called fossil logic. But basically what it means is that through graphs, we present the features of the soil, and with those rules, see where I need, what level I need to change in order to alter the model. And then we create a thematic map like the one we have here on screen, where we can qualify or classify the different types of soils for that specific use or handling. Okay, with these interpretations, we then identify suitability or how apt, but we try to look for the best word possible here, but so how apt or what limitations those different places have regarding the type of use that's going to be implemented according to our database. We use external investigation to determine what characteristics of the soil we're going to use. Like, for example, what is the index, the suitability index for that crop, erosion risks. We also have interpretations on whether you can build a home with a basement or without it, or just a living space. We can also have them for planning and recovering after disasters. So we identify which areas have limitations depending, and that will tell us what type of handling we need to use. Each one of them uses a different group of properties of the soil and of the landscape, and they're going to be specific. Some common types of interpretations we have classifications of agricultural productivity, for example. Today we're going to focus on suitability for cocoa and coffee, but also we have indexes of productivity. And I'm going to be talking about them in a detailed fashion. We also have interpretations of what type of drainage, soil drainage or risk potential we have. I'm sorry, what considerations for nutrient handling and suitability of conservation practices. So drainage channels, terraces, and so on. So we also have an interpretation of what would be soil health interpretations. What properties does the soil, what do we use from the soil? We use ones analyzed in the labs, but also observed on site, and they get incorporated into the databases. In lab measurements, we talk about, distribution of sand and so on. Where do we have water, the pH, the organic material, which is a physical property of the soil, and it's correlated with fertility, and the microbe activity, the apparent density, the, the amount of rock fragments, the cationic capacity of the soil to keep certain nutrients, electric conductivity, and we do that with correlations with salinity and others. Insofar as site observations, we look at the inclination, how much gravel we have on the surface, the geomorphic information, what's the position will in the landscape, where water gets stuck, floods, saturation. How deep do you go before you find saturation? So these are water levels based on the morphology of the soil. What is the restriction depth, meaning when do we bump into rock, to mention some. There are many more. We divide the different interpretations. We have national interpretations that are about 119 at present, ready to use in our databases. They're included automatically when we do the refresh, or we bring the database up to date, and that happens every 1st of October every year. And they're all available through the platform Web Soil Survey and in the downloads of the Soil Survey database. Examples of some of them, of these interpretations at the national level, would be in the handling of agricultural waters, health, soil health, and the managing of water sources. Going to the regional interpretations, we have around 70 interpretations. These are applicable to certain geographical areas. They don't apply to the whole nation. And in the case of these interpretations, the soil scientists, part of our responsibility is to publish this information. We decided that which of these interpretations we can publish for a specific region. Here on the table, you can't see it very well, I'm sorry, but you will see some examples where you have, for example, tropical crop productivity or suitability, cacao, coffee, and the plantain productivity. We have others that don't necessarily apply to Puerto Rico, but they do apply to other regions in the United States. And then we move to the local interpretations. These interpretations, what happens, well, the national ones or the regional ones do not necessarily correspond to the local needs. So we're going to have, in the case of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands or the Caribbean in general, we're going to have a series of examples of crops that do not necessarily get planted in the continental US. So we look at how we can use this database in order to create the models and supply those local needs. When you qualify the soils, we make certain suppositions that we're doing the right handling, that the climate features are natural. Some is there artificial drainage when it's necessary. So we use natural climate and weather movements. So we don't want flooding in areas where we have floodings. We don't want to have to build terraces, but to answer to the natural climate. So for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, we look at it for productivity indexes. And we've also worked on how can I say this? The susceptibility of the soil moving or having a landslide, for example. And we've also worked on interpretations of what of putrefaction in collaboration with the University of Mayagüez, University of Puerto Rico and Mayagüez. In the case of evaluating the local interpretations, we look at to the literature. We look at a specific literature that has been published, and we look at what are factors that influence the growth, physiological processes. For example, what affects the crop in essence, what affects its growth, its rate of growth, and in the productivity. Then that develops criteria to see what are the properties and qualities that were established or that will be established in order to establish those rules and then have them being evaluated for each one of the crops. In the case of the productivity ones, the behavior was was evaluated according to what happened on in the field, and that was done with agronomers and local soil scientists as well as with farmers. This was a collaborative work with the agronomers college, the subdivision of the soils and farming extension, the office, other soil scientists to see how these interpretations behaved and validate them according to the rate that we were working with them. This was developed with the support of national soil technicians that developed these models that I will be mentioning further on. But in the case of Dr. Botobos, who helped us from the beginning to develop these models for our specific needs and continues helping us. There we go. One example of the interpretation of suitability for coffee, you can see the map from the levels from the from low adaptability all the way to high, and we can see this takes into consideration not only the soil features but also climate features. We valued soils for their potential to produce coffee under normal conditions, non-irrigated conditions, and they're based on drainage, the pH, the capacity to retain water, and others that impact the growth of coffee. So we're going to see coffee throughout the island because it's not necessarily tied to the quality, but to the production. Here, I mean elevation. Here we see the productivity of plantains. Here we were, the soils were interpreted under the conditions of suitability in depth of the soil, drainage, inclination, pH. But in the case of plantains, we talked about the productivity and we knocked on the doors of different agronomers, in this case, Javier Gonzalez, who put us in contact with different producers of plantains at the commercial level and also to a lower level or scale in order to compare the productivity of these different types of soils under different types of handling and validating the interpretation. Here you can see how it's distributed, the areas of the better productivity and those of lower productivity for Puerto Rico. And we have the cocoa example. It was very similar to the one for coffee, but for the specific characteristics that impact cocoa growth and productivity. So in this case, what we did was a comparison. What is the performance of this one in the same place? So you see the one on the left, which is the cocoa, a bit different to the one for coffee, where the blue is of a higher suitability and the red is lower suitability. Very important value, because if I want to identify a place to plant coffee, then I know where to go, what particular characteristics I'm going to look for in order to make an investment with more information. And here, I'm going to make a short stop and I'm going to pass the floor to Jacqueline Vega so that she can do the demonstration. Can you hear me? We hear you, Jackie. Okay, now I do. Okay. I will be doing a demonstration live on Web Social survey and interpretate local interpretation that we have added in our platform on Web Soil Social Web, the WSS, cocoa, coffee, the productivity of plantains, and I've also mentioned some of the functions of this particular tool. All the information that I'm going to show you will be available in a document, in a PDF document that will be added to the chat. So if you can download it and you can follow it, then you'll have it as an example. To start, a short summary of what the platform is, of what Web Social Survey is. It's a free tool created by the NRCS. It was started being used in August 16 in 2005, and it's just 20 years old. And it was created to give access to the public to the data of the soil. And this is the official source of the soils, of the information on soils. We see an image of the WSS of the web page. So I'll go through a couple of sections that make them up. If you go from left to right, the section that says browsed by subject, this section will give you different links with resources related to soil sciences. In the middle, you'll see the green button that says Start WSS, which is the easiest way to start using the tool. And on the right, we see the section that says I want to, and this section has different links directly related to the tool of Web Social Soil Survey. The first one is Start Web Soil Survey is another way to access this tool. And at the bottom to the left, to the right, we see announcements and events that says whenever there's a new version of the tool, it gets notified in that section. Okay. For the purposes of this presentation, I want to emphasize one of the links that is in the I want to section, which is find information by topic. This link will give a table or a chart that has all the possible interpretations that are available on this platform. They're organized in alphabetical order, and the last actualization was in 2022. We have the first column, we have all of the interpretations organized in alphabetical order. The second one tells you what section within the Soil Data Explorer is that interpretation. And the third and fourth columns tell you which file. So the first one that is Astral Group, classification surface, this is a type of classification engineers use when they're going to build roads or highways. So this interpretation is within the category of soil properties and qualities, and within that, in the file soil qualities and features. And if you see the image at the bottom, you will see how it would look on the social web page. Now I'm going to access the platform. Okay. So here I have my interest area defined. I use the option here that it says define the interest through a rectangular area. It's located in an area next to experimental area in Lajas. And once you've established your interest area, automatically, if we go to the principal menu and go to link, this link will be updated every time that you define your interest area. It is copied and shared, and if there's another person that is working in that same area, that person will be able to access that exact same area. So you click it and you go exactly to that interest area or area of interest. So let's begin. To create the reports, the interpretation reports for the cacao crop. So first we will go to suitability and limited for use. So we're going to see it in categories. So we will see the one that is suitability and limitations. And within suitability and limitations, we're going to notice that there are 13 subcategories. But before that, I forgot to mention, you can see that the interest area changed from diagonal blue lines, and now we see the different units of the map that are within your area of interest. Now, let's access the subcategory that is land classification, and we can click there and open it, or on the little arrows on the right. Here, we're going to see all the different interpretations or reports related to that subcategory. For the purposes of this presentation, we're going to use the first two, cocoa suitability and coffee suitability. The first one is we're going to select cacao suitability. You're going to see a screen. You're going to see that almost all options are marked except detailed descriptions. We have to mark that because that will develop the description of that interpretation. Okay, so after we mark it, then we're going to click on View Rating, and automatically the maps will be generated, tables, and the description for our area of interest. Let me move, let me go down a bit, and we're going to notice that the first table is the summary per map unit. And this table opens up all the different units of the map that are within my area of interest. It includes the symbols, the acreage, the percentage that it occupies, and the rating, which is the class, how it's qualified. Then we have the second one, which is summarizes the numerical value of classification for a area of interest. So here, instead of classifying information through map units, it groups it according with the value of classification or rating, and that is the value determined by the climate, the characteristics of the crop, and the characteristics of the soil. And these classifications are done numerically and verbally. When it's numeric is from 0 to 1, and verbal is suitable, not suitable, or mid suitable. The higher the number, the more suitable the soil is for that particular crop. In this case being cacao. So that soil may have very low or no limitation. The lower the number, it means that the soil has a higher rate of limitations. So the crop, it can be, can be grown, but with lower productivity and higher costs. If we keep going down, we're going to find the description area, and it will give us information and how the report was created and what everything and what all of the rating values mean. Okay, let's go up. If we click on the legend, it will provide the colors associated to the classification values, to the rating. Here, they're not in a verbal way, but when you print the report, you will have the names suitable, non-suitable, and everything in between. In order to continue the second report, we have two options. If we don't know where the report is, we can use the search option. You're going to use it if only after the interest area has been defined. If you have not defined your area of interest, you won't be able to use this part. So here we're going to put the name coffee. We're going to hit search. Then we're going to see that we have two matches, and they're within Soil Data Explorer, and it's in Suitability and Limitations for Use. Okay, so when we open it, you're going to see the name of the interpretation, and it'll be in the form of a link. So if you click on it, it will take you directly to where the interpretation is, which in this case is in coffee suitability. So like in the other example, we need to click on detailed description so we get the information of the report. And then we're going to look at view rating. So it will generate our report and our maps. Just like for cocoa, it's going to generate the map, the tables, defined per unit of the map, and the numerical classification value, the rating. We'll have a description. And I forgot to mention that we also include the references. And here the description of the numerical rating values. To combine this report with another one or with others, we need to click on Add to Shopping Cart. If you want to put a title, you can. And then you hit OK. I forgot to do that for the cacao one, so I'm going to do it quickly in order to add it. So when I add it to the shopping cart, at the end, if I already finished generating all of my interpretations, I will go to my shopping cart directly. Let's say free. It says free. Here, I'm going to click on checkout in order to generate the report with all of the interpretation I added. I am putting it get now to get it immediately. If I had added, let's say, 10 different reports, it might not have allowed me to get it instantly, but then I would add my email and I would get it through my email. So let's hit OK here for these two. It takes a little while, and we're going to have a report, a more formal report with the interest area of the area that we were looking at, which in this case was San Germán. We will have the table of contents with all of the information of how the soil is evaluated, the maps, the legends, and you're going to notice that here we have our two reports, classification reports for coffee and cocoa or cacao. If we keep going down, scrolling down, we'll see the first map with its legend, the table, where we have all of the map units are within the area, more information on the units of the map units. And if we keep going down, we will find these reports on suitability and productivity. So the first one is the coffee one. As I mentioned before, here's the legend with the ranking values, and the interpretation. And we have the tables that we mentioned before for the map units and their ratings and the description of the report. We keep going down, we'll find the one for cocoa, cacao. So now, to save time, I will not, okay, let's add the report on plantains. Let's do it the other way. I'm going to go to Soil Data Quarter. From Soil Data Explorer, I'm going to go to Land Management. And within Land Management, I will look for productivity reports on plantains. That's right here. And just on the other two, I'm going to click I'm going to add detailed description, and then I'm going to click on View Rating. It's going to generate again the map, the tables on map unit name and rating. It'll give us a description of the interpretation, how the values were generated based on the soil properties, the limitations of the area, climate, and crop characteristics. Since I want to add this to my final report, I'm going to add shopping cart, and I'm going to go to the shopping cart. I'm going to click shopping cart free, and I'm going to bring up to date my final report. So now when it creates it, I'm going to have a new report that will add the interpretation for plantains. And while it gets generated, I forgot it's here. We can generate. And the same report that I mentioned will be generated, but it will add the plantain part. So if we go down to the end, let me scroll quickly. Give me just 1 minute to get there. The plantain productivity one should have been added, and here it is. This is the end of my demonstration, how to generate the interpretation reports. But let's say that you want to download the information on your area of interest. So we go to download soil data. We click on the download link, and this will generate a link that will add the tabled and spatial area of interest, and it will be saved to your computer, and then you can use it from there. Going back to the presentation, the slides that I share, we would like to thank the people that made these interpretations possible. It was a team effort. But principally, as I said before, this could not have been possible without the help of people who've been working with this for a number of years. To give you an idea, this idea began around 2016, 17 or 18, and if it hadn't been for this man you see there, Robert Dobbles, who became practically one of our friends, personal friends, someone who just came to help us with this process and the technical part of developing the link. He's the one who also developed the National Productivity Index. A big percentage of the interpretations that you see in the web survey, this is the person who has worked on them for years so that they can be possible. Here we have some photos of Bob trying out some citrus from Las Marias, smelling the coffee flowers. He was fascinated. And here a photo of us in Jayuya, the town that saw me grow up. But thank you, Bob, for all of your help. And let's go to the next slide. And also to all of these people, the University of Puerto Rico, Dr. Rebecca Tirado, who is helping us with the development of the interpretation of citrus and the suitability for citrus, the Hacienda San Pedro, the farmer Alberto Atienza, who whenever we ask for help, he's always available. The extensionist Vilmarie Bracero, who coordinated the visits to the cocoa visits in Rincon, the agronomer Luis Nieves for opening his farm to us in Añasco and Las Marias, his brother's farm, and showing us their operation in order to have that conversation with the farmers themselves of what their experience has been producing, in this case, citrus. And also, I can't forget the colleague and great friend Javier Gonzalez, agronomer. I think he must have more than 30 years of experience if he hears me saying that. He's been at it for a few years in the South in producing different crops like bananas and plantains. The agronomer Peter Hernandez from the farm Martex, and the owners, not only for hosting us there and talking to us about the plantain production and taking us to the field, but also opening the book so that we could see the production data in the different types of soils. Here we also have Daniel Morales from Finca Encanto, Puerto Rico coffee roaster. It's a farm in the center of the island in the town of Jayuya where they produce coffee, and also gave us a tour in a Land Rover around his whole farm, which is a spectacular farm. We had a conversation about coffee production, and the agronomer Francois Giuliani and his brother Joseph Giuliani, the vet, who have the Cyan farm in Juana Diaz, where we were able to see his operation of plantains under different handling techniques. Thank you to the College of Agronomos, the board, and its South District, and always to the University of Puerto Rico for opening their doors to help us in all of this. And this is just the beginning, because these interpretations, the more that they get used, the more it helps us to improve them. And with that, I leave you, and I hope to have covered the thank yous and the expectations that we all had for today. So I cede the floor, Noeli. Thank you. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Jackie, for an excellent presentation and demonstration of the tool. We have a question in our Q&A in which they wonder how you can access the roster of suitability of crops nationally in Puerto Rico. Yes, it's possible. You have a bit of knowledge regarding the systems of geographic organization, but in the section where Jackie mentioned, in order to download the data, spatial and table data, that zip file, the shape files, that's a format that we use, and it will bring down the tables and also an access. You have to do a bit of a relation of the data in order to run the model, but there's a version of shapefile. There's a Bayesian grade Surgoid, which is the raster version that can also be obtained. It's a little bit more complicated, but this person can, oh, it's Nora. Oh, hello, Nora. Well, we can talk about it. And I can show you in detail how to download the data and raster. But yes, it's possible. I want to mention that in the previous presentation, I mentioned that the area that we can create is less than 100-acre areas. But for this type of areas, which is all of Puerto Rico, we would have to go through search areas and then combine each area. We can do it, but we would have to download the the information on each soil survey area. Okay, excellent. Nora says that she will communicate. Another question, Manuel, is how long does this process take? You mentioned that you've been working one for citrus. What is that timeline? When can we expect the product? and if you have other crops in mind. Yes, our plan was to have it available for 1st of October, but the coordination, well, we weren't able to do it on time because right now we are in the revision of the projects to be published in the 1st of October, on the 1st of October. But depending on the information we have, that's how we can do. According to the information we have with Citrix, we have farmers that have productivity data. We have access to the farms to validate the concepts. So as a soil scientist and agronomer, I can go with my experience and knowledge and say these are the properties that impact the most and the landscaping or land markings that will validate this, but we have to go to the field to validate this. So we have the accessibility with Bob, who helps us with the models and databases, and we have to sit down. And something that also takes a lot of time is the criteria table and the literature revision, because we cannot publish something that has not been supported with peer-reviewed data. So that can take a month, 2 months, or it can take 6 months. And in this case, it took so long because of different factors. One of the weaknesses that we have in Puerto Rico is that not all of the farmers collect data, productivity data. And the productivity data are very important because that's where I can say the performance of these models, not only pertaining to the crops and under certain handlings, but also compare them with other models. In the case of plantains, we had historical information on productivity in our databases that gave us the ability to finalize the rules and the properties, identify the properties, and zero in on the rules according as a result to our database. But yep, if there are other crops that you understand we should focus on, please put it in the chat so that we can then take them into account. We had thought on citrus, bananas, avocados, mango. There's an interest in mangoes, talking with farmers, colleagues, and agronomers. This could be complicated because it can grow basically in a diversity of climates and relatively shallow soils. And Puerto Rico is known for its excellence in mangoes. But write it in the chat what other crops you would suggest so that we can take them into account and go working on them. Excellent, Manuel. Thank you very much. Jackie, do you want to add something? I was going to mention that these interpretations are final, but never actually final because we will always go perfecting them every time we have more information or better tools. We calibrate them. They become more precise. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much to you, to all of the participants, the interpreters, and the translators. You can visit the Caribbean Climate Hub website or the NRCS to get to know more detail on the resources that are available. And remember, this webinar was recorded and will be available so that you can review them further on through our YouTube channel. So thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon and take care. Thank you all.